Hello and welcome to Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. My name is Kelly and I'm a former wedding planner and blogger, and I'm obsessed with weddings. If you're planning a wedding in Ireland, you're in the right place. You're going to learn the tried and tested methods to planning your dream wedding without the added stress. Think of this as your one-stop shop for everything to do with planning your wedding in Ireland, with me, your new wedding planning bestie, and a cup of tea. This is Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. Well, Happy New Year and welcome to a brand new episode of the Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast. Today we're talking all about New Year's resolutions, but not just general ones. We're going really specific and we are talking about New Year's resolutions for couples who are engaged and planning a wedding. So I'm going to list a few things today that are very simple, but they can be a game changer because they're going to help you to stay focused, to stay on track, and to minimize the stress that you might be experiencing around planning your big day. So let's get started. New Year's resolution number 1, I will stick to my budget. Now, a huge piece of the wedding planning puzzle is creating a budget, but an even bigger piece of the puzzle is actually sticking to that budget. You don't want to begin your married life with a whole lot of debt and bills that need to be paid. And so if you want to avoid some unnecessary stress, then make sure you're actually tracking your expenses. So I always recommend having, some kind of a spreadsheet or however you like to track things, but whatever your method is, have what you've been quoted and then what you've actually had to spend, because sometimes there will be some extra costs involved, whether it's taxes or a delivery fee or whatever it might be. Those costs usually aren't big, but when they add up, you end up realizing there's a chunk of money that you've had to spend that you didn't think about. So keep track of your wedding expenses. And a top tip is to include wiggle room in your budget. So if you're at the point where you haven't yet created a budget, then make sure you've got a little bit of wiggle room. So if you think that something you need will cost X amount, then allocate X plus a little bit more so that if you do have any extra expenses, you're not surprised by them and you're not taken aback. New Year's resolution is this: I will listen to my gut. Everybody around you will have an opinion. People are going to offer advice. They're going to give you suggestions. And basically, the decisions that are going to be made at the end of the day, they have to be things that you and your partner are happy with. So you need to know that you can trust your gut. You've got to know that you can make decisions that you guys are happy with. You can listen to people's opinions. You can get their perspective. You can get their advice. But at the end of the day, you guys have to be happy with whatever you settle on. So when it comes to things like which traditions you want to include, which ones you want to ditch, it's got to be up to you guys to choose what you want to do. Now, you might be struggling to advocate for your wedding vision and your priorities. And if that is you, I highly recommend listening to episode 125 of the podcast. In that episode, I went through some very practical things that you can do if you're struggling to advocate for yourself. There are so many things you can do that involve having some potentially awkward conversations, but I've given you some language that you can use and some really diplomatic and strategic things you can do to make sure that you retain friendships and good relationships with your family members, even if you don't enjoy the suggestions that they're giving to you. But it will help you to trust your gut and to stay on track with your plans. The next New Year's resolution is, I will enjoy some time away from wedding planning. Now, I know this sounds a bit counterproductive because if you're trying to plan your dream wedding, you actually have to do some planning. But actually, if we're honest, planning a wedding isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it can feel like a second job and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I always recommend that couples take time to step away from the wedding planning. It could be things like having date nights where wedding talk is completely off limits. It could be things like hanging out with your friends where you just make a point of just finding out how they are doing and you're asking about them and you're not talking about the wedding. It might mean having certain days in the week where you just don't look at wedding planning emails because they can wait. Nothing is super, super urgent. Unless it's the week before your wedding, most things can actually wait. So take some time to step away from the wedding. You have my permission. Wedding planning should not be taking over your life. Take a moment to step away. How about this one? I will trust my suppliers. Now, your wedding supplier dream team will be made up of professionals who do this all the time. So now, for most couples, they only get to plan one wedding in their entire lifetime. But the wedding suppliers that you have got on your team, they do this for a living. They've planned hundreds and hundreds of weddings. They know what to do, and they are really the best. So just let them get on with it. Ask all the questions you need, but don't feel like you need to micromanage what your suppliers are doing. They'll communicate with you. You'll find that you'll actually be less stressed as well if you just let them get on with things. You can, chat, touch base when you need to, but you don't need to manage everything they're doing. And the next resolution, I will share the load. Between you and your partner, you'll probably find that one of you is the more organized one. It's probably the person who's listening to this podcast episode. And if that's you, there can be a temptation to take on all the planning and to make all the decisions and to ultimately then get burnt out by doing everything. My advice is to have a conversation with your partner and to talk about how you can get over this together. So if you want the day to be about both of you, then you both need to take ownership of the day. So you could share this podcast episode with your partner and say, listen, this is the advice that I've been given. We both need to take part in this. You'll have so much more fun if you're doing it together. You'll both be invested in the day. You'll have so many memories that you can make together by planning. And as the person who's probably taken on the bulk of the admin tasks, you will feel so much better by releasing some tasks to your partner. Now, of course, some of you might find that, within the couple, one of you is just more organized naturally and the other one is more creative naturally. And so one of you may still carry the responsibility of the admin side of things while the other person adds the color to what's happening. That's absolutely fine. But a New Year's resolution to make is to do decision making together and then to be realistic about who should take on which of the tasks to actually make things happen. And on a similar vein, the next New Year's resolution is I won't be afraid to ask for help. To keep yourself sane through wedding planning, it's really important that you don't do everything yourself, or as a couple, you don't do everything yourselves. You've already got your partner now to share the load with, but you're going to need other people too. So get your friends and family involved in doing tasks together. You'll start to feel that things are a bit less chaotic when you've got other people helpfully involved. Episode 132 of the podcast, that's 2 episodes ago, we shared a list of tasks that you can get your friends and family to help with. And now I understand that sometimes delegating in itself can be stressful, but once you've released the pressure and you've given some tasks to other people, you'll start to feel the burden lifting. So in that episode, that's 132, the tasks that I listed are things that don't need to be done by you. So when it comes to delegating, just in general, weddings and otherwise, the key is to find things that you don't have to be involved in and other people can do those things. The things that you need to be involved in, of course, you should do. Don't delegate those. But if it's a task that anyone can do, like making a bathroom basket, get someone else to do it. Okay, we've got 3 more New Year's resolutions to go through. The next one is I will compromise. And I mean that in a good way. You and your partner will probably be on the same page with a lot of things, but there will definitely come a time where you just don't agree on something. And it's important to remember that the day is about both of you. So compromising is just part of the plan. You just have to do it. There may be something that your other half really, really loves that you think is terrible, but you compromise and you say, you know what? It's their day too. I'm going to make sure that they have an amazing time. And hopefully they will be doing the same thing for you. There'll come a time where there'll be something you really want to include in the wedding and your partner thinks it's tacky or ugly or whatever it is, but they'll be saying, you know what? It's their day too. I'm going to compromise. And if you're both compromising, you'll end up with a day that feels uniquely you. And the next resolution is I will enjoy the planning process. So now I know we've already said it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but it can be lots of fun. The key is to make the most of the milestones. So savor the shopping trips that you get to have with your friends. Enjoy hunting for decor items and choosing rings with your partner. The day and the months leading up to the day will fly by so quickly. So you want to make sure that you soak it all up, you enjoy it, you're present, and you're just doing whatever you can to just enjoy the memories that you're making of planning the wedding together, because you're going to get to a point where you wish you could just do it all over again. And the final New Year's resolution, it's the most important one, and that's why I've saved it for last, which is I will remember the reason why we're doing this. This is the most important one. It's so easy to get caught up in the detail of choosing centerpieces and taking on DIY projects, booking suppliers, but you have to remember why you're doing this. Don't lose sight of the goal. You're planning a wedding so that you can marry your partner, and that is all that counts. The details will come together. You'll make compromises along the way. You'll probably feel overwhelmed at times, and then you will delegate to people, and then you'll hopefully feel better. But at the end of the day, as long as you are married to your other half, it's considered a successful day. So keep that in mind, that as you're planning your wedding, if things get overwhelming, just go, I'm going to be married. It's going to be fine. Well, thank you for listening today. The Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast is produced by me, Kelly, and mixed, mastered, and edited by Glenn Hartman. For more wedding planning tips, advice, checklists, and more, visit weddingsonline.ie.